So the role of a regulatory medical writer is to prepare the formal and the scientific documentation that pharmaceutical companies will need when they're developing a drug. So developing a drug is a really mammoth process. It can take up to around 15 years and cost well in excess of $1 billion. And the role of the regulatory medical writer is all the way through from preclinical studies right on to when hopefully a drug gets marketed. So preclinically, we've got in vitro and animal studies, and at this point, a medical writer might be involved in producing a non-clinical study report. And then as we go through clinical trials, there's a lot of documentation that needs to be produced. So this is things such as clinical study protocols, clinical study reports. And as you'd imagine, throughout clinical trials, safety is absolutely paramount. So as well as covering this in the reports we write, there's also specific safety reports, so development safety update reports. And then hopefully once the drug is marketed, it doesn't stop there. So we need to continue monitoring safety in particular after drugs on the market. So we will prepare things such as risk management plans, periodic safety update reports, and there'll also be studies that continue once the drug is marketed. So we'll have to write reports for those as well. So as you can see, the regulatory writer is really involved right from the start through to the finish. And this can be over a period of years, but often you wouldn't follow one product all the way through over these 10, 15 years, but you would be involved at various stages on various different products and drugs. Quite a few characteristics which are typical of medical writers. So I'd say the first one is being an excellent communicator and a team player. So I know one of the misconceptions I originally had about medical writing was that I would be, in a corner just typing away on a computer to myself all day. And that's really not how it is. Every single day I'll communicate with a client, so the pharmaceutical company that I'm working for, or I'll be communicating with medical writers that are on the team with me. And it's important that you can do this effectively and confidently, because it really does help us to produce good quality documents with the teams we're working with. Quite an obvious one, I guess, but being a strong writer, you need to have excellent written English. And a lot of the data that we're describing tends to be quite complex. So you need to be able to look at this, think analytically and produce it in a concise and coherent way in a document. Being organised is of course important because regulatory authorities have strict deadlines that we need to meet. But particularly if you work for a medical writing agency, such as Insight Medical Writing, where I work, you need to be able to be flexible. So it's not the sort of job where you can go in on a Monday morning and know exactly what's going to happen up until Friday afternoon. You obviously need to plan, but if another writer on the team perhaps has a more pressing deadline, you could be required to shift over and help them for a couple of days before then going back to your own work. So you do need to have that flexibility, but underpinning all of that is just being really organised with your time and good time management. So with these deadlines, you do need to be able to stay calm under pressure. These are really important documents that we're sending out that affect ultimately whether a drug is approved or not. So we do need to make sure we maintain the quality, even if sometimes deadlines can add that bit of pressure onto us. Attention to detail as well. We do need the accuracy of documents, and some things that some people might think are a small mistake can actually have quite a big impact. And so you need to have that attention to detail. And obviously underpinning all of this is a life sciences qualification, and particularly a PhD does help with this, as it gives you that kind of basic level of understanding of how the world of the pharmaceutical industry works and how publications work. And you're not supposed to be an expert in anything, but you need to be able to quickly research an area and be able to work on documents across a variety of therapeutic areas. So I'd say all those are kind of the main characteristics of a medical writer. My journey started off too long ago, I think nearly 10 years ago now, with a degree in pharmacology, and that was at the University of Liverpool. And I love Liverpool, so I was a bit boring and I stayed there to do my master's in research, which was in drug safety. And then I went on to do my PhD, which was in pharmacology. And when I started my PhD, I had every intention of working up to either become a lecturer or become a scientist in industry. But I'd say it was around my second or third year of my PhD that I just really was thinking I wasn't enjoying the lab work so much, but I loved going to conferences and presenting at lab meeting, organising protocols for the lab, basically all the kind of non-lab work side of my PhD. So when I came to look and think about what my career steps might be, I looked further afield than the traditional postdoc opportunities that were being advertised in my department. And I actually became so determined to find out what I could do that I organised a career seminar in the department. And the speaker at that wasn't talking about medical writing in particular, but he did mention it. And I'd literally never heard of medical writing at all. So I went away and I Googled it, and I came across a great website called firstmedcomsjob.com. And that contained some careers guides and also some profiles of current medical writers. And I vividly remember, because I'd printed it off, this careers guide to read on a train journey I was going on. And I just remember looking through the characteristics of a medical writer and just grinning, because I was so relieved that I'd found something that seemed to really kind of suit my skills, but also allowed me to use all that education I'd been through. You know, by the time you've got a PhD, it's an awful lot of hard work, and you've gained an awful lot of knowledge, and it just seems such a shame for that to go to waste. So I was so pleased that I'd found a job that seemed to be able to use my skill set, but just in a different way and just outside the lab, really. So once I'd found all that and I was really happy, I went along to a careers fair, and that's where I met my current employers, Insight Medical Writing. And I spoke to them about a bit more in detail about what medical writing entails, told them my background. They seemed impressed. So I sent over my CV and I got invited for an interview. And the interview I had, I think, is typical of a lot of medical writing agencies. So as well as the traditional interviewers asking questions, I also met with a couple of the writers that work there already. So that was good. I got a bit of a kind of day-to-day insight of what it's actually like. And then I also did a writing test while I was there, which isn't as daunting as it sounds. So it was basically, I had 30 minutes to go through an abstract and mark up any mistakes I saw in it. And that's to assess this attention to detail skill that is so important in a medical writer. And then after that, I also had a short test to complete at home in my own time. And this was just to write a summary of 2 articles I've been given. And once I sent that back in, it wasn't too long till I found out that I'd been offered the job. So yeah, that's what's taken me to where I am today. Current role at Insight is a medical writer, and what I really like is that there's a clear career progression at most medical writing agencies and indeed at Insight. So I'm hoping to work towards becoming a senior medical writer in a few years, and then going on from that, looking to be a principal medical writer, and then move into a medical writing manager's role. And even though they're called managers, they do still do a large amount of medical writing itself. Their sole job isn't just to manage people. So I like that, how you can still progress, but you still get to do the job that you originally started off doing. And I think to describe a typical day, it's probably quite useful for me to describe a typical project for us. So typically we would start off with a kickoff meeting with the pharmaceutical company that we're working for. And at this, there will be the medical writers, so myself and probably another couple of writers from Insight. And there'll also be team members from the pharmaceutical company. So this will be people like pharmacologists, clinicians, statisticians, and we'll talk with them to get an idea of the project scope, timelines, any background information will be provided. And so once we've done that, the medical writers will then go away and produce a first draft, and this will be sent to the client and they will provide comments on it. And then it's just kind of a cycle of this, really. So we tend to have around 3 rounds of reviews from the client. So they'll review our draft 1, provide comments, we'll incorporate those comments and use them to improve the document. They'll then get a second draft, which then might go to some more senior members of the team. And so basically this cycle will just carry on. Generally it's restricted to around a maximum of 3 reviews, but it can be more. And before it then goes out the door, we'll perform quality control checks. So this isn't just looking for grammar and sentence structure and punctuation and things like that. It's actually checking every single number in the document that we produce, because we just can't afford for there to be any errors. So that's a typical project, really. It is a mixture of really kind of communicating with the client and using that to produce the best possible document. And as well as communicating with the client, we also need to keep an eye on updated guidance from regulatory authorities. So regulatory authorities such as the MHRA in the UK, the EMA in Europe, they have strict guidelines that we need to adhere to in order to produce these documents. So a typical day for me, is quite hard to say really, because no 2 days are the same. So I would say it just consists of a mixture of interacting with clients at meetings. So for example, a kickoff meeting. And it also involves actually writing the documents themselves. I might be involved in some quality control for a document that another writer's been working on. So that's the sort of independent check of the quality of their work. And then, especially at Insight, you know, we do, well, pre-COVID, we did try to always make a bit of time for, you know, birthday cake and bits like that. So a typical day will normally involve, hopefully if it's someone's birthday, a bit of cake and a coffee as well and stuff like that. So these are intense documents we're working on. So it is good to have a good lunch break and a bit of tea and cake if possible. So I think the first thing, and this is mainly speaking from my experience. So I'd done a degree in pharmacology and I wasn't, or a PhD in pharmacology, but I wasn't going for a job as a pharmacologist. It was as a medical writer, and I had no medical writing qualification. So I thought, am I qualified enough for this? And I'm sure in most cases the answer will be yes. So since I've started, the main way I've learned is just by working with a more senior writer on all of my projects. So I've been able to work on at least sort of 10 different document types already, but just whilst I've been mentored, and that's been a really good way to learn. And also at Insight, we supplement this with in-house training. We also have external training from the European Medical Writers Association. So I wouldn't be worried about not having a medical writing qualification before you get into this. I think with any job as well, or any career, you need to make sure you research it. The firstmedcomsjob.com website, which I mentioned earlier, is absolutely great. It's a wealth of information and it gives you a really good insight into what it's actually like to be a medical writer. And I think finally, if you then decide to go on to apply for a job in this industry, it's important to tailor your CV. So a CV for a medical writer should look very different from a CV for an academic position. So we are, of course, interested in your PhD, and that's incredibly valuable. But what you would need to focus on is the transferable skills that you've got from that. You know, can you communicate? Have you written publications? Have you presented at conferences? Have you been able to organise your time? That's a lot more important to get across than things such as how many Western blots have you done or how many protein assays have you done. So yeah, I definitely say it's important to tailor your CV and look at the skills you've got, and I'm sure they will be a lot more transferable than you might have initially thought once you have a good think about it.